welcome back to my corner of the internet. I am Shannon, and today I've got a book talk video to share with you guys, and today we are talking about Comfort and Joy by Kristin Hannah. This is a Christmas story. If you've been around my channel for a while, you know I love Kristin Hannah. She's written some of my favorite books. The Nightingale was one. The Great Alone was another. Those two I just really loved. So when I saw she had a Christmas book out, I instantly grabbed it, even though this is from, I believe, 2005, and I was only finding out about it this year. Grabbed it. And this was a really interesting story. So I'm going to give you a general synopsis and review, and then I'll get into the spoilers. So I'll give you a warning before I do that. Anyway, this book is about a woman named Joy who is having a really tough time. 1 year ago, and this isn't a spoiler because it happens right at the beginning, but 1 year ago she came home and found her husband in bed with her sister. I mean, of all the betrayals, can you think of anything more intense than that? So that doesn't go well, obviously, and now when we meet her, it's been a year and she hasn't really spoken to either of them since. She comes home from work one day. She works at a high school. I believe she's a librarian, and she sees her sister standing in her driveway. She's kind of like, what does she want now? She gets out, approaches her. Her sister has an invitation in her hand to her wedding, where she'll be marrying Joy's ex-husband Tom. Sister Stacy, ex-husband's Tom. They're getting married. Not only that, Stacy's pregnant, which hits Joy especially hard because she had wanted to start a family with Tom for years, but they never did, and now all of a sudden, immediately, Tom's with Stacy and they're having a baby. Again, a lot to process. So Stacy leaves, or Joy just leaves her there. I can't quite remember. And Joy decides she's leaving for Christmas. She's not staying here. They live in California, I believe. And she decides that she's just kind of going to go to the airport and see where life takes her. She goes, books a ticket. She's going to, or her destination is a small town in Canada, where she can just kind of disappear for a few weeks, not have to deal with her sister and Tom, and just be alone and enjoy the holidays. So it's a small plane. She kind of gets a ticket, even though there's not really any tickets available, but the plane was rented out by, or all the tickets were bought by this one man. He's like, you know what, sure, we've got an extra seat, you can come. So she goes, and immediately, once, you know, they take off, soon afterwards, the plane begins to crash. Like, talk about it not being your couple of years. The plane begins to crash. And Joy is afraid, but not too afraid. Once the crash is over, she kind of gets her wits about her, and she can see all around her that it's just chaos, you know, of course, in the wreckage, and people are distracted and they're looking. She can tell they're not in Canada, but they're in, I think, like around Seattle area, Washington, but outside of the city. So she takes that opportunity with everybody distracted to just wander off. She's like, you know what, I'll find somewhere to stay here. If I just wander off, I don't have to deal with all this wreckage, all this stuff. And there's a small part of her that's like, you know what, maybe my sister thinking I'm dead for a few days would do her good. So she just wanders off. So from there, the story becomes this woman, she finds a place to stay in a hotel, like a sort of rundown motel that's closed. It's not in business anymore, but she finds a little boy who's awake when she gets there, and he's like, yeah, you know what, it's fine. Me and my dad live here. You go get a room in the morning, you can deal with him. And so she goes, gets settled away, goes to sleep. And then the rest of the story about the next 2/3 of the story is her in this small town getting to know this man named Daniel and his son named Bobby. And she starts to learn about the struggles that they face, and she decides that she knows in her heart she could help them, especially Bobby, the little boy. And that kind of becomes her mission, to stay with them for a while and just help them, help Bobby, because she finds out that his mom recently passed away and he's really struggling with that. So I will say, I'm gonna tell you after this little bit, we're gonna get into the spoilers. So if you're not interested in hearing the spoilers, definitely click away now. But if you love a good Christmas stories are always, you know, a little cheesier than your average story. But if you like that, I would definitely recommend this. But I'm going to give you a little bit of advice. Keep going. For the first little bit, you're gonna be like, especially once you get past the affair and the plane crash, you're gonna, or perhaps you're gonna, I'm trying to think of the right way to word this. You're gonna think, I don't love this. This is a little boring. I don't know if I want to keep going. Keep going. About 2/3 of the way in, there is a twist. And that's when the book was really saved for me. I was like, okay, here we go. And then I loved it after that. I do have to say though, that even after it picked up for me, you still really have to just sort of suspend your belief. So, you know, you have to, don't ask too many questions. You're not going to get a lot of answers. Just kind of let go of reality as you know it and let the story happen. And it's just kind of a nice Christmas story. That's different. It's very different. Over the years, I've done some book talks on Christmas books. This one is different. I will say that. In a good way. It's not your typical cheesy Christmas story. I also have to say that Kristin Hannah, just from reading this from, you know, almost 16 years ago now, she has come so far as a writer and an author, and it's just amazing. It's amazing. So if you don't want the spoilers, click away now. Let's get into it. So like I told you, Bobby's lost his mom. He spends some time sort of speaking to her ghost, and it's upsetting his dad a little bit. He's worried about Bobby. He takes Bobby to a child psychologist to try to help him through this loss. And we learn that Bobby's parents had divorced before the mom died. The mom and Daniel weren't together at that time. So now Bobby's spending all this time with Daniel for the first time in a while. And they're kind of getting to know each other, and it's a little awkward to be around. And Daniel wants so bad to help Bobby, but Bobby's resisting. And now Bobby's really excited to have Joy there. He's happy to have another female presence. And as you're reading it, you're like, the way that Daniel is interacting with Joy is so weird. Like, he's treating her really coldly, really weirdly, barely talks to her, barely looks at her, and you're like, what is going on? So eventually, when we reach that 2/3 of the way through mark, all of a sudden, Joy starts, they're at this like bonfire or tree lighting or fireworks or something, and Joy starts having this weird feeling. And she can feel that something strange is happening to her and she can't control it. And all the people that are around her, she sees her sister in the crowd and she's like, there's no way she's here. And then next thing we know, Joy's waking up in a hospital bed. And this is the twist. She's in a hospital bed back in California. Her sister's there, the doctors are there, and they're telling her, when she starts sort of babbling about Daniel and Bobby and how she promised Bobby she'd be there for Christmas, they're like, no, sweetheart, actually, no, you were in a plane crash and you nearly died in that plane crash. And she's like, no, I was fine after the plane crash. I went into town, stayed at a hotel, and they're like, no, you didn't, honey. You were taken from the crash site back to California to this hospital where your family was notified. And she finds out that she's been in a coma for 10 days. Her legs are broken. She has a really bad concussion. And it was all just kind of not real. What happened to her. What she remembers. Or rather it is, but not in the way that she thinks it is. So she finally is able to try to get her mind around what these memories are. 1, 2, 3, because they're very real to her. Then as time goes on, we find out that somehow when she was in her coma, she reached out through the consciousness, the cosmos, the whatever. And this is where you really have to suspend disbelief and whatnot, because there's never any answers given to how this was done, how this was happening. You just kind of got to go with it. But she was connecting with Bobby, because I guess Bobby has a sensitivity. It's how he's able to see his mom, which nobody believes he can do. And he was able to connect with Joy, her spirit, her whatever, when she was unconscious. And so Daniel, the reason he was acting so weird about Joy is that he couldn't see her. Only Bobby could. And when Bobby would insist upon, you know, Daniel being kind to their new friend Joy, eventually Daniel starts going along with it because the therapist suggests that he should, but he can't see her. So that'd be pretty strange, but you know, good for him for going along with it to try to help Bobby. So anyway, as time goes by, she heals up, and then eventually she goes in search of these people. She has to know if they're real or completely imagined. And she ends up getting a plane ticket. She ends up finding the town. It's a different town than in her mind. The hotel in her mind doesn't exist. But she finds them somewhere else by asking around town, because eventually, so she flies from California to Seattle and then starts sort of driving around the nearby towns. Sees one that looks like the one from her mind, though slightly different, and then starts asking around about them. And eventually she's directed to them. And she says, you know, Daniel looks slightly different than he did in my mind, but it's very clearly Daniel. And then Bobby's so happy to see her, although at first he thinks he's still imagining her. But then she convinces him that she's not. And then her and Daniel's so happy to see her, they kind of reconnect. And then you feel like there's probably going to be a romantic involvement for her and Daniel, and, you know, maybe eventually Daniel and Bobby will be a family. So it's pretty cute in that regard. But again, it's just sort of chalked up to magic. There's no reasons given. There's no explanation as to how this happened or why. It's not even explored at all. It's just kind of like magic, which would only work at all in a Christmas book. So I'll give her that. I won't think about that too much. I'll just kind of be like, it's Christmas, it's magic. That's all you need to know. But yes, in any other book, that explanation would not be enough, I don't think. But yeah. Anyway, yeah, I enjoyed. If you've read this, let me know if you enjoyed it as I did. And I hope you guys have a great day. Tomorrow, Vlogmas begins. So yeah, we'll be doing a lot of seeing each other over the next few weeks. See you guys then. Bye.